There's no problem with that. But in any case, if you change your mind, you can come and find me in the new small building that this branch possesses. I'll be waiting for your response," Sebastian stated. After that, he turned around and left. Jack did not say anything, but just watched as the two people that had come over leave, but still, he could already tell that there was something that Sebastian was definitely going to do about this matter. At the end of the day, how is it possible that a person of Sebastian's caliber could be sent over only to fail? Additionally, since he had already provoked the Force organization, then, that implied that they would definitely do something about this matter. Although he had actually denied to join them right now, they would definitely try to cause him trouble to make sure that he joined them. And from the way that he could see it, it was clear that Sebastian did not want to make him an enemy. Lights no V epsilon LC Omicron M, but that did not mean that he could actually not do anything from the shadows to make sure that Jack went ahead to see refuge from them. At the end of the day, it was actually the Force organization that possessed information about him and Celine. It was a good thing that they did not actually know about the fact that Denali had also become a superhuman. Additionally, she was not just a superhuman, but she had already reached the third stage of the superhuman level. If they came to know about that, and added to the information that Jack actually possessed 99 puppets that were actually at the superhuman level, they would definitely want to use every method possible to get them. At that point, they would definitely not care about making him an enemy or not. As for the 99 puppets, as long as they knew that they could actually be improved through the normal means, then, they would use all the resources possible in order to be able to improve their level. The reason behind that was the fact that the puppets could actually be controlled. They could not betray their master. And currently, Jack was the master. For that reason, they were not capable of betraying him no matter the situation that he was in. As for the transfer of control of the puppets to other people, Jack was not really sure if that was possible. In any case, he was not really willing to expose much about the puppets. They were going to work in the dark, and in case any of them was exposed, then, he was definitely going to just reveal that single one in the public, but that did not imply that he was going to let everybody know about them. As for the rest, they were going to continue to stay in the dark unless necessary. "So, what are you going to do?" Sylvia asked after Sebastian left. "Nothing much really. In any case, you better give me whatever it is that you wanted to do, to activate, so that we can deal with that first. After that, if that person sent by your brother is not here, then, I will definitely leave this place. And, since I am bound by the contract to make sure that you are safe from whoever it is that you want to escape from, I'll have to bring you along," Jack responded. Sylvia pursed her lips tightly as she looked at Jack. At this point, the point that she really caught the most of the fact that Jack would actually bring her along if he was going to leave. Quite curious, she asked, "Where is it that you are planning to go to?" "You'll know about that when the time comes. As for now, you can just go ahead and tell me what that item is." Jack responded nonchalantly. Of course, he was not going to tell her that he was planning to go to the Devon stronghold. If he informed her of something like that, definitely, she was going to be against it. At the end of the day, what she was trying to avoid the most was to be taken back to her family's stronghold. But, if Jack was going to take her there, then, she was definitely going to be against him. As for the reason why she didn't want to go there, she had never told him about it. Nevertheless, Jack didn't care. It was not as if he was going to continue staying here because she wanted to stay here. There was no way that she was going to affect his plans, and the mission that he had been given by the system. He had to complete the mission before the timeline ended. Sylvia looked at Jack and felt a little irritated. Had it not been for the fact that currently, they were cooperating, then she really wouldn't mind attacking him. Of course, that was just a thought, and even if they were not cooperating, then, she would definitely not try doing that. At the end of the day, she was not as strong as Jack was. So, as long as she attacked him, then, she was definitely going to be the one that was going to suffer at the end of the day. "Okay. Let's go. I'm going to show you the item," Sylvia responded after a moment of silence. Immediately after she finished speaking, she turned around and left the room without waiting for Jack's response. Jack simply shrugged his shoulders. Immediately after that, he called to Celine and the rest of the group that was present on the top floors of the building. When Celine arrived, Jack said, "I'll be going out. I don't know how long it is going to be, but, since currently, you are busy with something, I won't disturb you with that. But, I should be back before evening." "It's okay. Currently, I feel that I have already adapted to the increase in my strength, and other than that, I am currently about to finish studying the materials that you gave me. What will be left will be the practicals now," Celine responded. Although she was curious about what Jack wanted to do, she did not really ask him about that. In any case, they were still within the stronghold domain. And within this stronghold number 17, she didn't think that there was anything tough that needed to be taken care of. Of course, she did not really know about Sebastian and what aim he had come over with. But even if she knew about it, she would really not have been disturbed with it. At this point, Celine possessed absolute trust towards Jack. She believed that he was capable of doing anything. "Take care then. I'll make sure that I'll be back as soon as possible before dinner," Jack stated with a smile. Immediately after that, he headed outside of the building before entering into Sylvia's car. Sylvia did not say anything to Jack after he got into her car. She just begun driving towards the new villa that she possessed, one that was located towards the outskirts of the stronghold. This was actually a place that not many people knew about its existence. Of course, that was except for a few members of the group that she was privately owning. It took them almost an hour to be able to reach there, and Jack could not help but be a little bit mesmerized by the villa. This villa was quite big, occupying a space of about 1,100 square meters. It was painted white, without any other colors. Its design gave a majestic vibe, together with elegance. After entering into the villa, Jack found out that just as elegant as it looked from the outside, it was just as elegant inside. Almost everything inside here was expensive, made out of exquisite material. After entering into the villa, Jack took a seat on the couch in the living room. After that, he relaxed and waited for Sylvia. Sylvia on the other hand went upstairs. After about 10 minutes, she finally came back with a box. The box was dull brown in color, and it looked like nothing special at all. But still, since Sylvia had brought it here, that implied that there was definitely the item that she was talking about inside there. Although he was curious, Jack did not show any of that on his face, and just remained seated. Sylvia came with the box and placed it on top of the table in the center of the living room. The arrangement of the living room was in a way that the couches surrounded the chair. So, from where Jack was sitting, he could clearly see what was on the table. After placing it there, Sylvia looked at Jack. Looking at his expression that was filled with indifference, she hesitated for a moment. Although it was clear that Jack was not much interested in whatever it was that she wanted to reveal, but still, she was not sure if he was going to change his mind later on after seeing the item. But after thinking about the contract, since they had already agreed that Jack was not going to have any ideas about the item that she was possessing, then, she finally decided to reveal it. In any case, it was not as if Jack was going to take it with him. Click. The small lock of the box was finally unlocked. After that, holding the lid of the box, Sylvia took a deep breath before she opened it. After opening it, she turned it around and made it face towards Jack. Of course, her movements were without any hesitation after remembering about the contract that they had signed. Jack craned his neck and looked inside the box. Inside the box, he could see that there was actually something. It was something like a crystal bead. But the size of that crystal bead was like that of a tennis ball. Quite curious, he got to his feet and approached the table. After that, he looked inside the box silently. He was trying to see if he actually knew anything about this, but it was at this moment that he suddenly realized that he knew about it. Of course, the information that he possessed was actually from the intermediate level information of the information that he had received from the Force organization. Currently, it could be said that Jack was actually very familiar with several things within the stronghold. That was due to the fact that he had received the basic information from the Force organization. After that, with the multiplier effect of the system, the information was actually detailed, removing the conjectures and replacing them with facts. So, although it was true that this crystal bead was not actually mentioned in the information that he had received from the Force organization, but it was actually mentioned in the information that he had received from the system. Of course, it was clear that nobody within Stronghold number 17 actually possessed information about this crystal bead. But, since Sylvia was not from this small stronghold, she actually possessed information about it. But there was no way that she was going to reveal information about this crystal bead, considering that if the information was revealed, then, it was definitely going to cause trouble. And this trouble was definitely not going to come from just within the stronghold, considering that within this stronghold, other than Sebastian, currently, there was nobody that was capable of dealing with her, but outside of the stronghold as well. Of course, something like this was definitely going to attract the attention of the people from the big strongholds. And if that happened, then, she would have no choice but to go back to her family if she wanted to keep this crystal bead. An ability crystal bead, I see, Jack stated as he looked at the crystal bead. Sylvia was a little surprised after Jack stated the name. She herself had actually taken some time to be able to realize that this was actually an ability crystal bead. But for Jack, he had just looked at it without even touching it, but he had immediately realized that it was an ability crystal bead. She was not sure if Jack had actually possessed information about something like this, or maybe he had actually encountered an ability crystal bead before, but still, she was amazed. At this point, she felt that there was actually hope. Since Jack actually knew about this thing, then, perhaps he actually knew a method of activating it. And if it was activated, then, she was definitely going to benefit from it. "Can you activate it?" Sylvia asked with her eyes glistening with hope. Jack looked at her for a moment before he responded. To activate this ability crystal bead, a person needs to have an ability that corresponds with the ability that is present within the crystal bead. This was the first time that Sylvia was hearing about something like this. Since she was not much focusing inside the family during the time that she was inside the Devon stronghold, she did not really possess much information. An ability crystal bead was something rare. So, although she herself had actually seen one of them, she did not know about how to activate it. So, she was hearing this for the first time from Jack. Jack did not care about the reaction that Sylvia was having. Instead, he stretched his hand forward and grabbed the bead. The bead was crystalline, with a smooth surface. Other than that, it was quite cold to touch, but at the same time, Jack could feel that there was a hint of heat coming from within the crystal bead. It was just that, it was as if there was something that was trying to prevent the heat from coming out. Jack did not focus on that. Instead, he looked at the crystal clearly. He could see that the color of this crystal bead was somehow golden. It was just that the golden light was quite dim, and it was not bright, making it look like yellow and orange at the same time. For this one, we will need a person with a mental ability and ability to control, hypnotize, and stun the mind for a moment, Jack stated. The moment that he said those words, Sylvia's mind went blank. At this point, she really didn't expect that Jack was going to be able to activate this crystal again. At the end of the day, Jack was a person at the superhuman level. But he actually did not possess any ability. Of course, until now, Sylvia did not possess information about how strange Jack's genetic structure was. That was information that was not revealed to anyone other than the higher members of the Force organization, and the two that were involved during the tests. Of course, there was also Derek's father who had actually received information. It was just that he received information about Celine, and knew nothing about Jack. According to Sylvia, currently, she believed that the reason why the people from the Force organization were targeting Jack was simply because he had managed to reach the superhuman level before the age of 25. Is there any other way? We have to activate that crystal. It is so important to me. Sylvia questioned as she looked at Jack with hope in her eyes. It was just that, the hope in her eyes was not as deep as it was before. You should already know the answer. If there was actually something else that could be used to activate this ability crystal bead, then, I would have already informed you about that. Jack responded as he placed the crystal bead back inside the box. Sylvia of course understood Jack. After interacting with him for the past few days, she had understood that he was actually a straightforward person. And for that reason, he was not going to hide anything that she needed to know, or rather, he wanted her to know. Sylvia's mind was running, trying to think of a solution. She really could not give up on this ability crystal bead. This was the only hope that she was having to complete her goal. And if she did not complete the goal, then, she could only go back to her family. Currently, the only person that she could think of that was capable of activating the crystal bead was actually her niece. It was just that, she was not willing to go there. Additionally, she knew that if she asked her niece to come over, then, it was going to cause trouble considering that her brother was definitely going to know about where she was earlier. But that was something that she was not willing to allow to happen. Although it was true that Jack had asked for her to reveal information about herself in order to attract the attention of the person that had been sent over, she was not willing to take the risk. While Sylvia was thinking of a solution, Jack on the other hand was also thinking about how to solve this problem. But, no matter how much he thought about it, he could not find any solution to this matter. The ability crystal bead was something that was capable of granting someone an ability. It was just that, the ability crystal bead was always inactive the moment that it was found. To be able to activate it, it required the DNA of a person with the same ability as the one that was present within the ability crystal bead. After it was activated, it was going to be melted and turned into a serum that was going to be injected into the body of a person that wanted the ability. Well, this information was something that Jack had received from the intermediate level information from the system. Just as Jack was stranded on if there was actually another solution, another method of activating the ability crystal bead, a system prompt appeared in front of him together with Angel's voice sounding in his mind. Emergency mission program activated. After the host entered the stronghold domain with his authority upgraded to the second level, 2 emergency missions can be given at the same time. The system can help the host in activating the ability to control minds. But in return, the host will have to complete a mission given by the system. Jack's mind nearly exploded after hearing and reading the 2 prompts that had appeared in front of him. Why was it that he had not actually known that the system was capable of granting him something like that? Of course, he did not ask the system. He knew that if he asked the system, then, it was going to tell him that he was supposed to explore the system all by himself. May I know what the task I will receive from the system will be like? Jack asked in his mind. At the same time, he was just thinking about what the system had said, not give him the ability, but instead, helping him in activating the ability. The task granted to the host will be related to the ability that the host will be assisted in activating. In this situation, since the host will be assisted in activating an ability that is related to his mind, the task that he would be granted will be related to utilizing that skill to do something. For the first time, the system was vague about the response that it gave. At the end of the day, Jack had actually not received the response that he was looking for. After all, what he had asked for was about the task that he was going to be given. But right now, the system has just given him some clues about the task that he was going to receive, but the task itself had not been revealed. Can't you just be straightforward? Jack asked in his mind frustratedly. Ever since the upgrade of the host's authority to the second level, there was a change on the way that the system works. For that reason, the host will have to explore many things by himself. Jack was getting a little frustrated by the response from the system. Right now, he had already began fearing about the missions that he was going to be given by the system. After all, the one that he had been given previously was for him to be able to conquer an entire stronghold that possessed several superpowers. And right now, the mission that he was supposed to complete was not even given to him before he accepted. That implied that no matter what, as long as he accepted to have an ability of his activated, then, that implied that there was no way that he was going to refuse the task that was going to be given to him. Jack was not really sure about this mission. After all, right now, the thing that he did not want was for him to be given another task that had a time limit. But, as he knew the system, it was definitely going to give him a mission with a time limit because there was not even a single time that he was given a timeless mission. Still, although he was hesitating on that part, there was still another part that he was curious about. That was, the system claiming that it was going to activate an ability for him, rather than giving him an ability. From this, he could tell that he actually possessed an ability, but it was just that the ability was in an inactive form. That was something that he found strange, and he was really curious about the mysteries surrounding himself. After pondering for a moment, Jack finally came to a decision. Although it was actually a kind of risk for him to be taking something like this, but at least, until now, he had not gotten any risk mission from the system, something that was going to make him die. Of course, the mission that he had been given recently was something that if he went over without enough strength, then, he was definitely going to die if he just decided that he was going to conquer the entire stronghold. But still, that was something that depended on his choice. As for him being capable of conquering the entire stronghold, that was not a big problem. After all, it was not as if there was not anything that he could depend on. There was the system that was capable of increasing his income by 100 times. For that reason, he was capable of improving way faster than other people. Additionally, the resources that came from the system could be utilized immediately, not requiring him to engage himself in strenuous exercises that took a lot of time and effort. Okay, system. I accept the emergency mission, Jack stated in his mind. Confirmed. The mind ability of the host is going to be activated. This procedure is going to take 5 seconds. During these 5 seconds, the host will feel a little dizzy and a bit of a headache. The mission will be granted to the host as soon as the ability is activated. Activation will proceed in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The moment that the countdown hit 0, Jack suddenly felt that his mind had been flooded by a huge amount of information. At the same time, he felt slightly dizzy while at the same time, he felt that his mind was almost blanking out. Other than that, he failed himself experiencing pain. Although the system had actually said that it was only a small amount of pain, But a small amount of pain to the system was nothing to joke at when it came to reality. Still, Jack was able to stabilize himself, although he stumbled for a moment. The expression on his face did not change at all. At the end of the day, he had already received a warning from the system, so he was expecting that he was going to experience a lot of pain at this point. Sylvia was a superhuman. For that reason, she was able to notice that there was something that had changed. She had noticed that there was something that Jack had done, making him stumble. But that was something that was supposed to be impossible considering that Jack was not even moving around. Nevertheless, looking at the expression on his face, she decided not to ask about it. In any case, as long as there was nothing that concerned her, then she was not going to care. Instead, she just went back to thinking about the method that she was going to use in order to be able to activate the ability crystal bead. After all, depending on her niece was definitely something that was the last resort that she could utilize. After enduring 5 seconds of pain and discomfort, suddenly, Jack felt that his body was washed by a warm current. For a moment, he felt comfortable that he nearly moaned. But still, he was able to restrain himself. At that point, he felt completely relieved. At the same time, he felt that his mind was actually capable of processing a lot of information at the same time, enabling him to think faster than before. At this point, Jack suddenly felt impulsive. He felt that he wanted to use his mind to suddenly tell Sylvia to do something. But it was through his sheer willpower that he was able to prevent himself from doing something like that. Of course, the impulsiveness only lasted for about 2 seconds before it completely disappeared. The moment that it disappeared, Jack felt relieved. He then looked at Sylvia and said, "I will help you with activating that ability crystal bead. Other than that, I will also process it for you so that it can be injected into you so that you can receive the ability. But still, you will have to pay me for the services of processing the ability crystal bead." Just after Jack had finished what he was saying, another system prompt appeared in front of him. Task for the emergency program. The host is supposed to find the whereabouts of his mother within 1 month, 30 days. If the host fails the mission, then the ability that has been activated by the system will be removed completely from the host's body. Jack blanked out for a moment. To say the truth, the thing that he was least expecting from the system was actually for each to ask him to look for his mother's whereabouts. At the end of the day, how was his mother's location related to the system? But although he was curious about this, he did not try to ask the system about it. In any case, the system was just going to respond that if he wanted to know about it, he had to complete the mission first. Are you sure about that? You know, you don't have an ability that is related to the mind, right? Sylvia asked. Of course, she did not know that Jack had actually been focusing on the system all along, and had only heard the last part of whatever she was saying. I don't think I ever told you that I don't have an ability, did I? Jack asked with raised brows. When Sylvia thought about what Jack had said, she realized that it was actually true. All along, Jack had not stated even for a single time that he actually did not possess a special ability. It was just her and the rest of the people that assumed that he did not have an ability. Well, that was actually the truth. Though, this might actually not be true as well considering that the ability was activated by the system, and not given to him by the system. Okay then. But what kind of compensation are you going to ask about? Sylvia asked. Of course, she knew about the processing of the activated ability crystal bead. It was just that was something that could only be done in the big strongholds. Only people in those big strongholds were capable of doing something like that. But right now, she believed that Jack actually possessed the ability of doing something like that. So, she was curious about what kind of price he was going to ask from her. Quite simple actually. I would like resources from you. I want resources that are capable of influencing a superhuman. The better they are, the better the chances of me assisting you in the future are, Jack responded. Resources that are capable of influencing superhumans? But that is something that I can only get after we go back to the Devon stronghold, and back into my family. But right now, I cannot offer you something like that because I don't really have it. Sylvia responded with a frown on her face. If she actually possessed resources that were capable of affecting superhumans, of course, completely ignoring the ones that were available in the small strongholds, then, she herself would have definitely been way stronger than she currently was. In actuality, if she was back in her family, then, perhaps she would have already reached the 9th stage of the superhuman level. But because of the lack of resources, she was only able to reach the 2nd stage of the superhuman level. Of course I know that. But, who said that I wanted them right now? But still, what I'm trying to say here is that, once you go back to your family, You will have to give me resources. Of course, they cannot be too shabby, right? Jack responded. Sylvia thought about it for a moment before she nodded her head in agreement. Currently, Jack could as well decide not to assist her in gaining the ability that was present within the ability crystal bead. And since she was the one that was currently desperate, Jack could go ahead and increase the price drastically, and there was nothing that she could do. After all, there was nobody that she could depend on in order to be able to process the ability crystal bead. But it seemed that Jack was not a profiteer. At least, he had offered her a choice of deciding on what she was going to give him as payment for his service. But still, there was something that caught her attention, and that was the fact that Jack had said that the better offer she gave, the better the chances of him assisting her in the future would be. Of course, had it been just anybody, she would have dismissed them. After all, if they were not from a family that was way above the one that she was from, what was it that they could help her with if she went back to the family? But it was completely different when it came to Jack. This guy was surrounded by mystery, and, right now, not only was he above her when it came to the power level despite the fact that he was younger than she was, but he was also in possession of a special ability. Okay. I have already accepted that. So, can you activate the ability crystal bead for me? Sylvia asked. She was getting a little impatient with the chat considering that the ability crystal bead was just in front of her. For the past 5 years, she had been silently watching this ability crystal bead within the box. But, there was nothing that she could do about it considering that Jack's mother, Anne, was not present to activate it for her. But now, there was a chance of it being activated. So, she was looking forward to gaining the ability. After that, the goal that she was having in her mind was going to be completed soon. At that time, it would not be much of a problem even if her brother got her back to the stronghold where her family was located. Before we do that, we will have to sign another contract. After all, how can I be assured that you will not go against your word? Jack stated simply. After that, he put his hand inside the pocket and took out a contract. Of course, this contract was retrieved from the system. Sylvia looked at Jack speechlessly. She had not expected that this guy was not trusting her, although they had already gotten familiar with each other. At the same time, wasn't there already a contract that was binding them together? That contract was enough for him to be assured that there was no way that she was going to betray him. After all, if she did something like that, then, that was going to be against the clause that stated that her family had to support Jack and his organization. And, who was it that stated that she was not part of the family? So, since she was a member of the family, she had to support Jack and his organization. So, why would she go ahead and betray him? In any case, knowing that no matter what she said Jack was not going to change his mind, she decided to go along with what he was doing. After Jack wrote on the contract form, he handed it over to Sylvia. After Sylvia read through everything, she took a hairpin from hair and used it to make a small wound on her finger. After that, she dropped blood on the contract form. Jack did the same thing. With the utility knife that he was carrying around with him, he cut a small wound before dropping the blood on the contract form. The moment that his blood touched the contract form floated in the air before it disintegrated into pieces that divided into two and lodged themselves into the heads of the two people. With the contract finally in place, Jack went ahead and dropped another drop of blood from the same wound that he had made previously on top of the ability crystal bead. The moment that his blood touched the ability crystal bead, a golden light suddenly erupted from it. The light was so blinding that Sylvia and Jack were forced to close their eyes. Ta-ta! Suddenly, the table where the ability crystal bead was placed on suddenly began trembling. The intensity of the trembling of the table increased as time moved on, and after about 10 seconds, it suddenly stopped. Together with the stopping of the trembling, the golden light that had completely enveloped the entire living room of the villa suddenly dimmed down. As Jack and Sylvia opened their eyes, they looked at the ability crystal bead that was currently shining with a golden light. The intensity of the golden light on the ability crystal bead was as high as it could be. To process it, we will have to go back to my building. There. I have the required equipment that I can use to process it for you into a serum. Jack stated as he closed the box that possessed the ability crystal bead. Sylvia did not object that. Instead, she was actually anticipating the result of taking the serum. So, she did not say anything else and just picked up the box and followed Jack out of the villa. Along the way, Sylvia was driving the car maniacally. The speed at which the car was moving was almost 2 times the one that she had been using previously to go to her villa. After they arrived at the building that Jack and the group were living in, Sylvia was the first one to alight from the car. And, Looking at Jack, who was moving around as if he was not in a hurry, she could not help but ask, "Why are you so slow? Or are you trying to make sure that I die from anticipation?" Lights N Omicron V Epsilon L. Jack looked at Sylvia speechlessly. Then, he asked, "What are you so anticipating of? Isn't it just gaining an ability? It is not as if you are going to be capable of controlling the moon and the sun, right?" Sylvia did not really know what she was supposed to respond to that. But after a moment, she came up with a reason to why Jack had spoken to her in such a way. "You know, you actually possess a special ability. And not only you, but even your girlfriend actually possesses a special ability as well. For that reason, to you, a special ability is nothing special. But still, you will have to know that it is called a special ability because it is special. Only a small percentage of people within the stronghold domain are capable of activating the special ability. As you can see, in the entire stronghold number 17, the only people that possess a special ability is you, and your fiancée Celine," Sylvia stated as she looked at Jack with some envy in her eyes. "Anyway, that is what you think. But I do believe that the number of people that do possess a special ability is kind of innumerable in the entire stronghold domain. It is just that many of them are kept as a secret from the public." Jack responded nonchalantly as he entered the ground floor of the building. The moment that Jack entered the building, Celine and the rest of the group came downstairs. Of course, if there was a person that was going to come into the building, they would definitely want to know who it was. But after noticing that it was Jack, they relaxed. But still, Celine felt that there was something wrong with this Sylvia. After all, she had been coming over again and again, although they did not have anything in common that they needed to discuss or do. Nevertheless, she did not say anything. In any case, it was not as if Sylvia was affecting the way that they were living. So, she could just ignore her presence here as long as she did not do anything that irritated her. After greeting Celine and the group, Jack went ahead and took his position on his workbench. Looking at Sylvia, who was standing some distance away from him with the box, he looked at her with raised brows as he asked, "Now, can you tell me who it was that was so anticipating of something not long ago?" It was only after Jack had said that finally, Sylvia came back to her senses. She went ahead and handed over the box that was carrying the ability crystal bead to Jack. After that, she took a step backwards and looked at him, waiting for him to begin the procedure. Celine looked over with curiosity in her eyes. She couldn't help but ask, "What is that?" "It is an ability crystal bead. It is used to give someone an ability. Rather, it is more like helping in the activation of an ability inside the body of a person," Jack responded. Of course, he possessed information about something like this, considering that he had received the intermediate level of information about resources present within the stronghold domain. The ability crystal bead was like a stimulant. The moment that it was injected into the body after it was activated and converted into a serum, it was capable of stimulating the cells inside the body of a person. But of course, each ability crystal bead had an area of target. The one that they were currently possessing was the one that targeted the mind. So, the moment that it was injected into the body of a person, it was going to activate the cells that were related to the mind. After these cells were activated, they were going to be strengthened. After that, a person would be able to integrate with those cells as time went by, but they would be able to gain the ability from the first moment after the serum was consumed by the body, and the cells were activated. That was actually the way that the ability crystal bead was functioning. Of course, there was a difference between granting an ability and activating an ability. There was a group of people that possessed an ability initially, either through birth or through acquisition. But still, through the ability crystal bead, the cells that were responsible to a certain ability were activated, therefore granting the people that did not possess the ability that specific ability that was related to the ability crystal bead. As Jack continued to explain about the ability crystal bead, he continued with the procedure that was required in order to be able to convert the ability crystal bead into a serum. Sylvia was also listening in into the conversation. She had not expected that Jack was this knowledgeable. At this point, she could not help but feel a little embarrassed. After all, she was from a big stronghold, but the amount of information that she possessed was nothing compared to the one that Jack possessed. It seemed that after she went back home, she had to make sure that she went through all the information that she could find. Currently, she could not access the information unless her aunt sent her the information. But if the information was sent over and she received it, then, the location that she was currently in was going to be revealed. And if that was the case, then, the person that her brother had sent over to look for her was definitely going to be able to arrive here way faster than expected. Jack, on the other hand, proceeded with the procedure. First, he ground the entire thing, turning it into powder. Of course, he did not do that using his physical strength, rather, he used the equipment that were present inside the room. After grinding it into powder, he began burning it inside a container. He increased the temperatures to a high degree, increasing it drastically until the moment that the entire powder was turned completely red. After that, Jack just continued heating the powder. He did so until it melted completely until it melted. Immediately after it had completely melted, Jack stopped the heating. Instead, he went ahead and began cooling it down using hydrogen liquid. And of course, the moment that he began using the hydrogen liquid, the temperatures within the room suddenly dropped drastically. It was a good thing that the liquid was not exposed directly into the air, but instead, it was injected into the container that was possessing the melted ability crystal bead. The moment that the hydrogen liquid touched the melted ability crystal bead, the ability crystal bead suddenly began freezing, and in no time, it had completely cooled down before it was again turned back into solid. After he was done with this, Jack took the frozen ability crystal bead out of the container. Then, he began heating it at a temperature of about 600 degrees C. The ice that was covering the ability crystal bead began melting. After a while, the temperature of the ability crystal bead began rising. But of course, Jack was not going to let it melt again. Instead, after he ensured that there was no coldness on the ability crystal bead that was currently in a weird shape, Jack stopped the heating. Immediately after that, he began grounding it again. After it was turned into a powder, he took another solution that was pale purple in color. Immediately after that, he dissolved the grounded ability crystal powder inside. The moment that the powder touched the liquid, there was the sound of something hot touching an extremely cold surface. At the same time, vapor suddenly begun coming out of the container that was possessing the pale purple liquid. "Is it poisonous?" Sylvia asked. After all, currently, everything that Jack was doing right now was not done inside a lab that was meant for research and dealing with things like this. So, she was afraid that perhaps they were supposed to be putting on masks during the time that this vapor was coming out. "If it was poisonous, don't you think that I would be the first person that would die?" Jack questioned back sarcastically. Immediately after that, he ignored Sylvia completely, and simply focused on continuing with what he was doing. After about 30 seconds, the reaction between the liquid and the powder had finally completed. The powder on the other hand had completely dissolved into the pale purple liquid. It was just that, after the powder was dissolved into the liquid, the color of the liquid had changed completely. Now, it was no longer pale purple, rather, it was golden in color. It actually took the color of the ability crystal bead. Of course, something that the group could see was that the amount of liquid that was currently present was so low as compared to the amount of pale purple liquid that was used to dissolve the ability crystal powder. Initially, there was about 500 milliliters of it, but right now, it was just about 1 or 2 milliliters. Of course, the procedure was not completed yet. So, after the dissolution of the ability crystal powder was completed, Jack took the solution and placed it inside another machine. This machine was in the shape of an oven, and it actually functioned just like an oven. It was just that the temperatures inside this machine was several degrees higher than a normal oven. After placing it inside there, Jack decided to do something else. And of course, he decided that he was going to try and manufacture something that was going to be used to improve their abilities. It was just that the resources that they currently possessed was not enough to be able to produce anything important that was capable of affecting them. But still, he was trying to see if there was a chance that he was going to be able to create something that was capable of improving Samantha's abilities. After all, he had already promised her that he was going to give her something. But until now, he had not given her anything, considering that he had been previously expecting that he was going to use something that he was going to gain after the multiplication of what he was going to receive from the Panthers organization. "How long is it going to take for it to be completed?" Sylvia asked. Of course, she had to get impatient because this was something big for her. To be able to gain a special ability, that was something that many people within the entire Stronghold domain yearned for. It should take about 1 hour or so, but after that, there is yet another procedure that is required before the completion. Jack responded without even looking at her. Sylvia did not respond. But at the same time, she just complained in her mind, "Why is it taking so long? I thought that this thing was going to take a very short time. After that, I would be able to gain an ability." It had already been about an hour and a half ever since Jack began the procedure of creating the serum. Each and every process that he was involving during this time was actually consuming some time. So, it was obviously going to take some time before it was finally completed. On the other side, Jack was thinking about what he was supposed to do. After thinking for a while, he finally decided that he was going to produce something that was going to be required by several organizations within this small stronghold. Currently, whatever it was that he produced was not actually multiplied by the system by 100 times. For that reason, he could only produce something that was not present within this small stronghold, and after that, he could sell it for something big. Of course, if he sold it, whatever he was going to get was going to be considered as income. And of course, he was not going to take the star coins as a form of payment. Rather, he was going to take something else, something that was capable of improving someone's strength. After thinking for a while, Jack did not really come to find anything that he could make with the materials that were here, and was still not present within the stronghold that he was in. Of course, he could produce almost everything that was present within this stronghold, but it was just that although his going to be high, that was not something that he was looking for, at least for now. What he wanted was something unique, something that everybody was going to look for him for that. He wanted something that there was no any other place that they could get, even if there was a decision to take something of a lower quality. He thought for a very long time, but he did not really come to anything of important that he could create. Of course, he decided that if he did not find anything that he could create that was completely unique to him, he could as well decide to create something that was going to be used by the people here. It had to be something that was of a higher quality than the ones that were being produced here. After that, as long as he acquired the resources that he wanted, then, he was going to stop the production. Sylvia, do you perhaps think there is anything that can be produced within this stronghold that is not actually present here, but is present in the big organizations? Jack asked after a moment of thought. Sylvia looked at Jack, wondering what it was that he was planning. In any case, she still responded, there are a lot of things that can be produced. In fact, inside this small stronghold, there are a lot of things that are not present here. And that is the exact reason why the people in these small strongholds find it difficult for them to be able to get stronger although they train hard every day. But still, there is one thing that we cannot change, and that is, we cannot change the fact that inside here, there are no resources that are capable of producing something that can be found within the big strongholds. I already know about that. I just want to know about something of a low level within the big strongholds that cannot be found within this small stronghold, Jack responded. If that is the case, Sylvia stated before she began thinking deeply about what could be found back at her family, and could not be found here. After a while, she thought of something and looked at Jack and said, actually, the thing that cannot be found here and can be found within the big strongholds is a communication device that is capable of showing the image of the person that you are communicating with. It is just that. Got it. Even before Sylvia could finish what she was saying, Jack had already gotten an idea. Although it was true that he was not capable of producing a high-quality communication device, one that was capable of doing something like a video call, at the same level as the ones that were found within the big strongholds, he was capable of producing one that was capable of doing something like that, although it was going to be of a low quality. Having already made a decision in his mind, Jack began thinking about the information that was in his mind. Of course, the information that he had received from the system was at the intermediate level. So, currently, he was capable of producing the mid-level communication devices that could be found within the big strongholds. It was just that, if those ones were brought inside a small stronghold like this one, then, they were going to be top-notch technology. So, the ideas of the production already appeared in his mind as long as he thought of that. At the same time, he thought of the materials that were required. But, the information about the materials was something that was giving him a headache. He came to a realization that almost all the materials that were required for the production of such a communication device were all not found within a small stronghold like this one. But still, Jack found something else. He realized that he could replace almost everything that was required for the production of the communication device with another one of a lower quality. It was just that due to this reason, the quality of the communication device that he was going to produce was going to be considered a low-level communication device within the big strongholds. Nevertheless, Jack realized that although he was capable of replacing almost everything that was required for the production, there was one thing that he could not replace, and that was a chip. That chip was something that was capable of connecting the communication devices. After thinking about anything that could be used to replace it, Jack finally decided that if there was nothing that could be used to replace it, then he was going to create one of his own. Of course, Jack finally began trying to use the materials that were present inside the building to begin the production of the communication device. There was still some time before the completion of the production of the serum. So, instead of wasting time waiting idly, he decided to do something productive. He was not the only one, considering that Celine and the rest of the group finally decided to go upstairs. But of course, they asked Jack to remind them as long as the production of the serum was completed. The production of the communication device was actually not complex at all. In fact, Jack did not begin the production from the beginning. Instead, he just took the materials that were present and began combining them. But of course, some parts required him to work by himself to create them. Nevertheless, by the time that the serum was completed, he had already constructed half of the communication device. The only reason why he was taking some time was due to the fact that he did not possess equipment that were in line with the production of the communication devices. But he was going to acquire them after he completed the matter of the serum and the activation of the ability for Sylvia. After reminding Celine and the group about the completion of the production of the serum, Jack took out the serum out of the machine. It turned out that after heating it up, the machine was capable of cooling the serum back to room temperature. Currently, the color of the serum had completely turned gold, although it was previously gold, but it was of a light shade. But right now, it was a darker shade, almost turning black gold. Jack proceeded to place the liquid into a cartridge. Thereafter, he took the cartridge syringe and placed the cartridge inside it. Subsequently, Jack went ahead and took the medical kit that was present within the room. After that, he placed them on top of a table and looked at Sylvia, waiting for her to come over so that he could inject it into her system. Sylvia approached Jack without even being asked. After all, she was the one that was impatient about getting the ability. But, after she arrived in front of Jack, she got somehow nervous. Although she really trusted Jack possessed several abilities, but was it really possible that the serum that he had processed for her safe? After all, they had not done any testing. But looking at the amount of liquid that was present, she realized that it was impossible for testing to be done. If they did something like that, then it was going to be wasted. Why are you hesitating? Do you think that I will prepare something that is going to affect you? If I wanted to kill you, then I could have done that personally. Additionally, if you die, who is going to pay me for all the work that I have done? Jack asked with raised brows as he looked at Sylvia. Just looking at the expression that was on her face, he could already tell what she was thinking. But anyway, he could not blame her that much, considering that the abilities that he possessed were way out of a person of his age's league. After hearing what Jack had said, Sylvia realized that she was just thinking too much. At the end of the day, what Jack had said was true. If he really wanted to kill her, then, he was definitely capable of doing that without even using the long procedure. Just looking at him, she could see that he was always busy, so why would he waste about 2 hours just in order to kill her? With that conclusion, she went ahead and removed the armor that she was wearing. Of course, she just removed the top that was just like a shiny leather jacket, but it was heavier as compared to the one that was produced by Jack. Inside the jacket, she was wearing a crop top that tightly hugged her body. But of course, Sylvia did not care much about the exposure of the skin of her belly, considering that right now, she was just thinking about the effects of the serum in her body. As for Jack, after just a simple glance, he focused on what he was supposed to do. After preparing the arm, he went ahead and injected the serum into her body. The moment that she was injected by the serum, Sylvia was expecting that there was going to be a change that was going to occur. But after waiting for about a minute, there was nothing that occurred. Are you sure that the serum is functional? Sylvia couldn't help but ask as she looked at Jack doubtfully. Don't worry. You will know soon, Jack stated mysteriously. No sooner had he just finished speaking did Sylvia suddenly feel the effects of the serum kicking in. Suddenly, Sylvia felt that her head had been hit by something heavy and hard. For that reason, she felt somehow dizzy while at the same time experiencing a headache. Other than that, she felt that in her mind, there was something that was trying to activate. It was a process that was filled with pain, something that made her grab her head tightly. It was just that she was trying to make sure that she did not scream due to the pain that she was currently experiencing. The amount of pain that she was currently undergoing was tremendous, and had it not been for the fact that Sylvia was someone that possessed great will, she would have definitely screamed, asking for it to stop. Of course, the changes that were happening to her were not only happening in her head, but in other parts of the body as well. It was just that the changes that were occurring to the other parts of the body could be considered negligible. At this point, inside Sylvia's head, inside of the brain, several inactive cells were activated. And with the activations of these cells, they began acting. At this point, they were being supplied with energy from the serum. So, they were running at an incredible speed, way beyond the speed at which the other cells in the body were operating. Nevertheless, they were causing the body to have an effect as a whole. With the activation of this cells, the other cells in the body also began gaining the energy. But of course, the energy that they were gaining was not comparable to the one that the new activated cells were gaining from the serum. This process went on for about 5 minutes. And during these entire 5 minutes, it was as if Sylvia was experiencing hell for an eternity. Although it was just a short time, but still, just the pain made it to be long enough. At this point, after about 5 minutes, the pain suddenly began reducing. With the reduction of the pain, Sylvia could finally breathe. At the same time, she also began noticing the changes that had occurred in her body. She realized that currently, she felt that there was some kind of energy inside of her body. But of course, this energy was found closer to her brain, though not inside her brain. She felt that if she controlled this energy, she was going to be capable of doing anything. Of course, this was just an illusion that was created after gaining an ability so suddenly. You better try to learn and control yourself. If you let yourself go, then, you are definitely going to cause havoc. At this time, Jack's voice reached her ears. It was only then that Sylvia finally stopped focusing on the energy that was inside of her. Instead, she looked at Jack with some complicated emotions. She really didn't know what to say to him right now. Initially, to say the truth, she hated him. After all, he was the one that was involved in the breaking of the personality that she had integrated in the entire Panthers organization's members. But after interacting with him, she didn't find him as repulsive as before. And after he had helped her, her impression of him had increased. And right now, possessing the special ability that she had gained through the assistance of Jack, she felt gratitude towards him. So, at this point, she decided that if there was a time that Jack needed assistance from her, as long as she was capable of doing it, she was going to help him with it. "Thank you," Sylvia stated as she looked at Jack. Jack was a little surprised after hearing what she had said. After all, he knew that Sylvia was a person that possessed an ego. So, although he was helping her, he had not expected that she was going to tell him thank you. For that reason, during the time that she needed assistance from him, he had always been asking for payment. In any case, it was just a business transaction. But now, he had to change his impression of Sylvia. But after thinking about everything for a moment, he realized that perhaps there was something that Sylvia was planning to do. And whatever it was, that was something that was supposed to have been done several years ago. At the end of the day, Sylvia had made a deal with his mother so that she could activate the crystal for her. Nevertheless, his mother suddenly disappeared for several years, and the crystal had never been activated all these years. So, that implied that currently, Sylvia was now capable of doing whatever it was that she was planning for several years now. As for what it was, Jack did not want to get much involved into it. To him, as long as he completed part of his task together with the end of the contract that he was supposed to fulfill, he did not really care about what Sylvia decided to do. But of course, that was on a premise that she did not actively decide to make him an enemy. If she did that, then, he was definitely going to be involved in whatever she was going to do. "You could thank me better if you gave me some resources that are capable of affecting superhumans, you know," Jack responded after about 2 seconds. Sylvia could not help but look at Jack speechlessly. She was not the only one considering that even Celine and the rest of the group present were actually surprised by the way that Jack had responded. At the same time in her mind, Celine could not help but think that she really didn't notice that Jack was this much shameless. According to what she understood, Jack had done this for Sylvia because she was going to pay him. So, that thank you was just by the way. Sylvia could have decided not to tell him something like that considering that she was going to pay him for the services anyway. But nevertheless, she was not going to say anything about this matter. In any case, if Jack got something good, then it was definitely going to make their lives easier. And, if Jack's life was easier, that was something that she really wanted to see. Forget it. So, I should be going back. I need to try and train my control over this ability that I have gained. If I try it right now inside here, I don't know if I can really control it, Sylvia stated. "You can just go ahead. As for me, I still have something to do. In any case, if you have another business transaction, you can just come over and find me. But remember, whatever it is that you want to do, make sure that you do it sooner. If the time comes for me to leave this place, I will definitely take you with me to make sure that I don't end up failing to fulfill my end of the contract. After all, I don't want to die yet," Jack responded. Immediately after that, he turned his attention and focused on the creation of the communication device. Sylvia looked at Jack, who had completely ignored her presence, and could not help but feel dissatisfied. But in any case, she had already gotten used to this side of Jack. So, she didn't say anything and turned around and decided to leave. Of course, she understood that Jack had his own things to do. It was just that, for her, after the activation of the special ability, she was finally closer to the goal that she was aiming for. So, she didn't mind what Jack had said. She believed that by the time that Jack wanted to leave this place, she would have definitely completed whatever had brought her here. After Sylvia left, Celine looked at Jack and asked, what kind of ability did she gain? She was not the only one who was curious about the ability that Sylvia had gained. All along, until now, Celine had not met anybody that possessed a special ability. For that reason, she was quite curious about those that possessed special abilities. Even for Alicia, Celine had actually never interacted with her. Instead, it was Alicia who had been acting from the shadows all along during the time that she was manipulating and controlling Celine. So, if it happened that Sylvia actually possessed the same ability as the one that she had, then, she wanted to engage with her, so that she could understand the ability that she possessed better. At the end of the day, by observing the others was another method of learning. So, although she possessed the 100 times multiplier effect, something that enabled her to learn 100 times faster, but she believed that if she came to know how others operated the same ability as the one that she was having, then perhaps she would be having another perspective of the control of the ability. It's just a mental ability. As for the specifics, I think it is something illusions or telepathy. I'm not sure which amongst the two she possesses, Jack responded. After hearing Jack's response, Celine could not help but be a little disappointed. After all, if Sylvia possessed an ability that was either telepathy or illusions, then that meant that they were not on the same path. It might be true that they were both possessing mental abilities, but they belonged to different divisions. But you don't really need to worry about that. I can guess what you are thinking about. So, I'll help you with that. Jack stated as he turned his attention from his workbench and looked at Celine. You can do that? Celine asked in surprise. I haven't told you about this. But right now, I have actually activated a special ability. And this special ability of mine is kind of special, Jack stated. Celine looked at Jack with both surprise and excitement in her eyes. To her, there was nothing as important as Jack being capable of getting stronger. After all, inside of the stronghold domain, only the strong were capable of keeping themselves safe. At the end of the day, they could not depend on indirect power. A person might actually be possessing a big background, but that was not a guarantee that they would not end up dead the next day. It was true that a person like that would be protected by someone, but who could guarantee that they would not be assassinated by someone who was stronger than the protector? So, it was always good to depend on personal strength, rather than depending on others. So to Celine, as long as Jack was strong, then, he was definitely not going to have much trouble inside of the stronghold. The only reason why she had been training so hard was not only due to the passion that she possessed and the ability that she currently possesses, but it was also due to the fact that she wanted to help Jack. Jack had already informed her of the girl that he was having in his mind. It was to conquer a stronghold that was possessing a name, a stronghold that was considered a big one within the entire stronghold domain. If that was the case, then that implied that they needed to have strength, they needed to have power. Otherwise, with the strength that they currently possessed, it was going to be an impossibility for them to be able to conquer a stronghold like that. What kind of ability is that? Celine asked curiously. At the same time, she rolled her eyes at the fact that Jack had just said that he possessed a special ability that was special. Wasn't it already special the moment that he mentioned special ability? But, she did not say that out loud. It is a mental ability. According to my understanding currently, it is the ability to control different abilities. Well, I'm getting confused here. So I should just say that I possess all the mental-related abilities. Jack responded after a moment of thought. Seriously? You actually possess all the abilities that are related to the mind? That is so overpowered, Celine exclaimed as she looked at Jack. She was not the only one who was surprised by what Jack had said. Samantha and Denali both were just as shocked. It was just that they did not say anything, because they did not really know what they were supposed to say. In any case, they understood the implications of what Jack had said. Being capable of possessing all mind abilities implied that he was capable of telepathy, telekinesis, illusions and many more. If information about such a person was actually leaked to the people from the big strongholds, then they would definitely increase the effort that they were putting in order to be able to make sure that they recruited Jack into their organizations. For the Force organization, they already knew about Jack. They already knew about how strange his genetic structure was. They already knew about the fact that he was a superhuman at such a young age, and at the same time, he was way above the second stage of the superhuman level. With all that information, had it not been for the first that it was just a single person within the entire organization that was making moves, Jack would have definitely been taken to the Force organization by force. At the end of the day, Jack was just a mystery. 1. He managed to reach the superhuman level before the age of 25, something that completely broke the record that had been set by the strongest person present within the stronghold domain. 2. The structure of his gene was something that had never been seen before, or at least if it's ever existed, it had never been released to the public. And 3. He possessed a special ability. And that special ability was just as Jack had said, special. Being capable of possessing all mind abilities in the form of a single ability. At the time, those organizations would definitely not mind making Jack an enemy of theirs. If he could not join their side, they would just go and operate on him, trying to understand how it was possible for him to be able to possess those abilities. Of course, they would try to see if they could acquire the abilities by themselves, and if not, they could just try and see if they could transfer it to someone else. But if everything else failed, they could just decide to kill Jack, considering that he was going to be considered as a threat to them in the future if he managed to mature. But that assistance I will be giving you later on. Right now, I have not yet understood it well, and I'll need about a day at most. At that time, I will be able to control the abilities that I possess quite well, Jack stated as he looked at Celine. There's no need for you to hurry about something like that. In any case, I'm sure that what you are doing is quite important. And currently, I don't think that my ability is required. So, you can just take your time on that matter, Celine responded. She already realized that Jack was dealing with something else, and if he was doing that right now, that implied that whatever he was planning to do was something that was going to be able to improve their strength. And just from the fact that he had talked to Sylvia, telling her that he was getting ready to leave this place soon, so she had to finish whatever it was that she was doing as soon as possible, that implied that they had to be ready to go out of this place. Jack nodded his head. After that, he turned his attention back to the device that he was producing. It was just that it was going to take some time for the first one to be produced, considering that he was creating everything from scratch, and at the same time, he was actually researching. Celine did not go back upstairs. Instead, she remained behind with Jack and decided to help him in the construction of the communication device. As for Denali and Samantha, the two ladies decided to go to the store. In any case, it was not as if the store was rented so that it could remain closed. But, in reality, they didn't even need to do something like that. At the end of the day, Jack had acquired all the stores that were possessed by the Force organization and the Panthers organization. It was just that after Jack decided the integration to be done, whatever it was that was inside the store that was counted as an income for him was integrated after the multiplication effect. So currently, there was nothing within the stores that was multiplied by 100 times. That meant that the stores currently possessed everything just as it was before he took over. It was a good thing that currently several members of the Panthers organization had decided to join Jack. But of course, all of them were those that did not have anywhere to join. As for Jack, he did not chase anybody that wanted to join his organization. In any case, even the organization itself had not been created. So currently, he needed several people that had to take care of the assets that he had acquired within the stronghold. About an hour later, Jack finally completed all the procedures that were required during the production of the communication device. It was just that one thing was missing, and that was the chip that was supposed to be used in order to link several communication devices together. Jack had already made an order for the equipment and other materials that were required for the production of the chip. So, at this moment, all of them were inside the building, with all that was left being him taking action to create the chip. Celine had been helping all this while at the same time learning. It was a good thing that there was the multiplier effect. So, as long as Jack taught her something, she was going to be able to easily grasp it. Just as Jack was about to begin creating a chip, someone came knocking, and Jack was surprised after seeing who it was who had entered. It was actually none other than Johnson. "I'm sorry for the interruption, but this time, I had to come," Johnson stated after he entered into the room. Currently, the room had been converted into a workshop, so Johnson could see that Jack was busy with something. But he had no choice but to come over because it was just recently that he had received information about the changes that had occurred within the Panthers organization. "Oh, it's good to see you again. Do you perhaps have something that you want to discuss with me?" Jack asked, not minding the interaction by Johnson. "Actually, the reason why I came over is because I just heard that the Panthers organization is no longer present. It has been dissolved. And according to the information that I have received, you are actually the person who had taken over the resources that belonged to the Panthers organization," Johnson stated. I'm quite surprised that you actually came to know that I am the one who took over the resources of the Panthers organization, Jack stated as he looks at Johnson. It might be true that during the time that he was interacting with Sylvia, going there for the transfers to be done, many people from the Panthers organization had seen him. But still, he had never spoken in front of everyone that he was the one that was going to take over the resources that belonged to the Panthers organization. For that reason, the majority of the low-level members of the organization did not really know that he was the one who had taken over everything from the Panthers organization. As for Johnson, according to the position that he was holding, it was clear that he was not a low-level member of the organization. But nevertheless, he was not present during the time that Jack made several visits to the Panthers organization. And from the fact that Johnson was only coming over right now, claiming that he had just received information that the Panthers organization had already been dissolved, it was clear that this guy was not even paying much attention to what was going on outside. Well, Jack expected something like this from this guy. After all, he liked to stay inside his workshop, where he carried out several craftsmanship experiments and research, while waiting for a person that was going to bring him a task that was quite challenging for him to try it. To say the truth, with the position that I held within the Panthers organization, getting information about something like this was definitely almost impossible unless it was revealed to me by members of the organization that held high positions. But still, with the skills that I possess, it is obvious that I possess several connections within the organization. But the Panthers organization is not the only organization that I do possess connections with. Currently, I am the best craftsman present within the entire stronghold. So, it is normal that members of the other organizations would come to look for me in order for me to craft something for them. And due to that, I have already formed several connections. So, through these connections, I was able to get the information, Johnson explained. Jack of course understood what Johnson was trying to imply. In any case, ever since they had come to this stronghold, it was clear that Johnson was the best craftsman that was present in the entire stronghold. But, something like that changed long ago, a few days ago to be precise, after Jack gained the intermediate level craftsmanship. But of course, he was not going to tell Johnson something like that. At the end of the day, it was not as if Johnson had asked about it. Alright. I hope you don't mind telling me the reason why you came to look for me after gaining that information. As long as I know, I do believe that nobody just you out of the place that you were doing your works, right? Jack asked. The moment that he took over every asset that was previously possessed by the Panthers organization, he made sure that he informed Sylvia that Johnson was not supposed to be disturbed. And actually, this was the reason why Johnson only received information after he came out of the workshop. Otherwise, there would have definitely been someone who would have gone over to inform him about what was happening right now. That's actually true. But the main reason why I am here is to ask about the deal that we made previously. Currently, I can see that I underestimated you. It seems that you possess not only great potential, but you also possess great power. Due to that reason, I do believe that you will no longer be staying within this small stronghold. So, the reason why I am here today is to ask if at the time that you would be going out of this stronghold, can you take me along with you? Johnson asked as he looked at Jack seriously. Jack was a little surprised by the analyzing skills of this person. Nevertheless, it was understandable that someone like Johnson whose family was from a big stronghold initially was definitely someone that could possess such kind of intelligence. In any case, it was not that easy to be able to make a small organization within a small stronghold like this one to submit everything that they possessed, unless the person possessed enough strength. And looking at Jack and his group, all of them were young, and since that was the case, it was clear that they were definitely not going to stay here. They still possessed great potential, something that needed to be nurtured. And Johnson believed that for them to be able to be nurtured well, they had to go to the big strongholds. And in fact, although he did not really say it out loud, he believed that Jack and his group were actually from a big stronghold. Otherwise, how was it possible that Jack possessed a blueprint that was way more advanced than he had ever seen before, and he possessed such great power? After contemplating for a moment, Jack looked at Johnson and said, "I've got no problem with that. I can take you there, but you will have to depend on yourself after we reach there. But in any case, I'll make sure that I fulfill the end of the deal that we made previously." Johnson felt gratified. Although it was true that Jack had said that he had to depend on himself, but that was not something that he was afraid of. In any case, to him, as long as he managed to reach the big strongholds, he was sure that he could be capable of improving. And after improving, he was definitely going to be able to gain his source of income, something that was going to make him stable enough to survive inside a big stronghold. As for the matter of Jack taking care of him, he did not even think about it. At the end of the day, although it was true that the books that he had handed over to Jack possessed incredible knowledge, but they were just the basic versions. So, to a master craftsman, those books really didn't hold much value. So, exchanging something like that for access into a bigger stronghold, that was definitely a big gain for him. As for his enemies managing to find him, that was almost impossible as long as he kept a low profile. In any case, it was not that easy for the organizations in different strongholds to move to the other strongholds without good enough reasons. And if they went to another stronghold, they definitely would not just start going around, looking for someone. So, he believed that with the protection from Jack, due to the agreement, and the access into a big stronghold, he would definitely be able to gain something, and later on, he would be able to take revenge on those enemies of his. But there was one thing that he was worried about. He looked at Jack and asked, "What big stronghold would you be going to?" "About that, I'm sorry, but I cannot tell you about it right now. Nevertheless, you'll know it before we leave. At that time, you will decide whether you are going to come with us or not." Jack shook his head as he responded. Of course he could already tell what Johnson was thinking about, but he was not going to reveal information about him planning to go to the Devon stronghold right now. At the end of the day, if this information reached Sylvia, perhaps this lady might react explosively to the news. And if she decided not to help him with his plans, then it was going to be a little bit difficult for him to be able to complete the mission that he had been granted by the system by the end of the remaining less than 30 days. Although he was a little disappointed, Johnson simply nodded his head. At the end of the day, it was good enough that Jack was going to reveal the information to him before they left. In case it was the same stronghold that he came from, then he would definitely not go. "Okay then. I'll be on my way. I was just about to have a breakthrough in a certain research that I was doing. I do believe that after this short break that I have taken, I will be able to do that," Johnson stated as he began turning around. "No problem at all. Before we leave, I will give you information in advance, perhaps 2 days before I decide to leave this place. But let me give you a heads up in advance, it will definitely not be more than a week before we leave this place." Jack waved his hand as he stated. "I got that," Johnson responded before he strutted out of the building. "Jack, I do believe that currently I am capable of defeating that old man when it comes to pure skills," Celine stated after Johnson departed. "Well, what do you expect? You're a genius after all," Jack responded with a smile. "Get lost," Celine responded jokingly. And just like that, the two of them began joking around as they continued trying to produce the chip that was required for the communication device. In another side of stronghold number 17, Patricia looked at Antonio furiously and asked, "Are you really sure about this? What do you think? Do you think that I'm going to joke about something like this?" Antonio asked back. From the expression on his face together with what could be seen in his eyes, it was clear that at this point, he was completely furious. "But you have to think carefully about this matter. If you do whatever you are planning, there is definitely going to be a consequence for that. And I don't want to experience the same thing like what happened before," Patricia stated as she looked at Antonio seriously. After she had saved Antonio, she took him out of the Panthers organization. Due to the fact that the entire organization had already been disbanded, nobody was keeping watch over the dungeon. So, when she went there to save Antonio, nobody questioned her. At the same time, although a few of them saw her taking Antonio out of the dungeon, nobody questioned her again. At the end of the day, what was the use? The leader, the one who had asked for Antonio to be locked up, was the one who had disbanded the entire organization. For that reason, the majority of the people who had already stabilized their position in the organization did not have a choice but to start afresh in another organization if they did not want to join the whatever organization that Sylvia was talking about. There were some of them that even hated Sylvia for what she had done. As for the others, they were just there, not caring about what really happened to the organization. To them, as long as there was a source of resources, that was where they would go. So the moment that the Panthers organization was disbanded, they joined another organization to continue with their own lives. Other than that, there was yet another reason. And that was the fact that Sylvia had said that everybody was free to leave. If they wanted to join the organization that was going to be created using the resources that belonged to the Panthers organization, they could as well go ahead and do that. Since that was what she had said, then Antonio was no longer considered a member of the Panthers organization that had already been disbanded. So, he was no longer a prisoner, but a person with his own freedom. After they left that place, just to ensure that they did not encounter Sylvia, Patricia brought Antonio to the outskirts of the stronghold. They stayed there for the past 3 days, while Antonio was healing up. Of course, Antonio also possessed several connections within the stronghold. For that reason, he was capable of acquiring several healing serums and pills, things that enabled him to be able to recover. But of course, he had not recovered fully, considering that if he wanted to use the high-level resources and equipment to heal up, he had to join an organization, or he had to depend on the resources of the Panthers organization. But with the Panthers organization already disbanded, and the control of the resources being under someone else, even with the connections that he possessed within the organization, there was no way that he could mobilize the resources in order to heal up. That was the exact reason why right now, he was still using a support machine in order to be able to walk around. That was something that he hated the most. After all, it was not long ago that he was holding one of the most supreme positions within an organization that was known as the biggest within the entire stronghold. And right now, he was just a pathetic, crippled person. Currently, he did not have much on him that was going to be able to enable him to afford resources that were required for him to be able to recover to his peak condition. But of course, that was not something that he was targeting. He was not planning to remain as a cripple all this while. So, he was planning something, and that something was the reason why he and Patricia were involved in an argument. Are you trying to tell me that I do things without thinking? Is that what you are trying to imply right now? Antonio asked as he looked at Patricia furiously. I never said something like that. You said it yourself. But in any case, right now, you are definitely not thinking things through before you take action. Right now, I'm telling you that if you do what you are intending to do, then, you might end up losing your life. Patricia stated as she looked at Antonio. Why do you even care about my life? If you don't want to support me, then you can just decide and leave. It is not as if I depend on you on anything. You saved me this time, but that is not as compared to what I did for you during the past few years that we have been inside this stronghold, Antonio stated furiously. Had it not been for the fact that he was injured, he might have actually been stepping closer to Patricia right now. But of course, he knew that if he tried to attack her right now, if she decided to retaliate, then he was not going to be able to match her. So that is how you viewed it. It turns out that you only thought of benefits. If that is the case, you provided me with resources, and I became a member of your faction. And during the time that I was a member of your faction, I did a lot for your faction, something that there would definitely be no one that will be willing to do that, Patricia retorted. Do you think that what you were doing at that time was quite much significant? Whatever it was that you were doing back then only made things simple, but it was not as if whatever you were doing was impossible. Antonio responded harshly. If that is what you think about me, then I think that I'll go my way. I have already done what I needed to do, and if it is repaying you for what you did for me, I have already saved you. During the time that you were inside of the dungeon, I made sure to bring you food, and believe me, had I not made arrangements, you would have been starving, not getting any food at all. Patricia stated, as her eyes reddened. That trash is what you call food? Are you joking with me? Do you believe that had it not been for the fact that I was inside there, I would have not eaten anything like that? Antonio questioned back. Do you think any luxurious food would be capable of entering the dungeon of the organization? You know the Supreme Leader very well, and if she realized that I was taking care of you, then, I'm pretty sure that you know the consequences of that, Patricia responded. What consequences are you talking about? Isn't it just something simple as getting some small punishment? Antonio asked sarcastically. You are talking about the condition that you are in as a simple punishment? If you really like being a cripple, don't involve me in something like that. I don't want to be a cripple, Patricia responded. Of course, although it was true that she had feelings for this guy, at this time, the feelings had already began fading away. At the end of the day, she came to realize that all along, she did not really know Antonio. It turned out that this was his personality, a personality that was considerably reckless. And other than that, it turned out that she was just a clown all this while. She had never been appreciated, although she had spent the majority of them time that she had been inside the stronghold domain, trying to impress him. It might be true that he had rejected her, but right now, she did not feel down. Instead, she felt that she was lucky that he did not accept her. If the two of them had actually gotten engaged in a relationship, then perhaps she was going to suffer much more than this. Do you think that I enjoy being in this condition? If I really did something like that, then do you think that I would be doing what I'm doing right now? Antonio asked as he looked at Patricia furiously. At this point, he could no longer see the gentle lady that was always there during the time that he needed her. In fact, even at some points, even though he had not requested her to do anything, she would always do things that would make almost everything convenient for him. You don't like it, and do you think that I do? I don't want to get crippled right now. If I become a cripple, what do you think I will be doing? At least for you. I was there to take care of you during the time that you could not walk. Then what about me? Patricia retorted the back. You ungrateful B***tch. Had it not been for the fact that I still need you, I would have definitely dealt with you. Antonio stated as he looked at Patricia. He felt like strangling her, to make her disappear from this world. But who said that I need you for anything? Right now, I do believe that I can survive. At the same time, it is not as if I have enemies like the ones that you currently possess. So, I am going. If you want to do something, then go ahead and do it. But make sure that you don't involve me in whatever you're going to do. Completely infuriated by the vulgar words that Antonio had used to refer to her, Patricia stated before she turned around and left. Antonio was completely stunned for a moment. He did not expect that Patricia was going to leave just like that. At the end of the day, wasn't she infatuated with him? How was it possible that she was just going to let go like that? Whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll make sure that I recover first, and after I reach the superhuman level, I'll make sure that I deal with these two B***tches. Antonio muttered in a low voice. After that, he turned around and went in the opposite direction of where Patricia left to.